Every day, you wake up as your own boss, making your own way. Every day, you continue your journey to change the world, your team, and yourself. Every day, you encourage, congratulate, celebrate, and reach toward your goal of being the best and providing the best. The Build Your Best Business Show is for you. The real stories of building a business from other owners and founders along the journey. Find the support and advice you need to successfully start, grow, manage, and exit your business. What are you going to do today to build your best business?
Welcome to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. Build Your Best Business focuses on the entrepreneurial journey. What does it take to successfully start, grow, manage, and exit a business? I almost forgot my own intro. Talking today with Heather Cabot. She's co-author and co-founder of Geek Girl Rising, and she's also an angel investor. So Geek Girl Rising, I'm immediately curious about what that title means and what the book's about and what you're doing with that.
So Geek Girl Rising, and the subtitle is Inside the Sisterhood, Shaking Up Tech. And
right.
I include that because that is truly what the book is about. It's about the women who are disrupting business as usual in Silicon Valley and beyond. The women who are working at the grassroots level, whether it is launching their own tech startups, investing in each other's ventures, crushing the male hacker stereotypes, building their own networks, inspiring the next generation. All of these women have been working at the grassroots level to make change, to bring more diversity and more inclusion into the innovation economy, in many ways under the radar into the last couple of years. And so this issue of the gender gap in tech really began to emerge from our reporting in 2014 is when it really started to be talked about much more. But many of these women had already been working from the ground up to launch initiatives to change things. And so that's what the book is about. It's about this movement.
Yeah, and so talk to me about how you decided that this was your thing. Like, how did this become your thing to talk about and write about?
There are a few different ahas.
Okay.
When I was first out of Columbia J School, one of my first freelance
Columbia
gigs.
Journalism School?
Yes, where I am an adjunct professor today. And actually,
so you and I might know that. Other people might not know.
Sorry, where I met my husband
okay.
also. So when I first graduated, I was an aspiring television news reporter and anchor, and living in New York City, at that time we sent out tapes.
Yeah,
sending out my tapes, trying to get.
My producers are both like, what?
They're like, what? Trying to get my first on-air job. And I stumbled into a freelance researcher position on a PBS documentary called Minerva's Machine.
Okay.
And Minerva's Machine was the first film that really took an in-depth look at the lack of women in computing, which was a really striking problem because women had been the majority of the programmers during the dawn of the computer age.
Yeah.
And somehow during the 80s and the 90s, the numbers just completely dropped off. And so this film was coming out in the early 90s, and they were looking at what had happened, looking back actually at the 70s and 80s. So there I was, 21 years old. I was a researcher on this film. It was one of the first films that actually profiled Grace Hopper. And I started learning about this problem. So then I went off. I got my first job at WCAX, Channel 3 in Burlington, Vermont, and I was a weekend anchor and reporter, and I left and moved on. But it kind of always stayed with me. And so fast forward to 2007, I had left ABC News, and I was now a mother of twins, and I was recruited by Yahoo to be their national consumer spokesperson and sort of digital lifestyle editor. And what my role was in that job was to cover the way consumer internet was changing our day-to-day lives and come up with interesting segments for shows like The Today Show and Martha Stewart and Rachel Ray. And in the course of doing that reporting, I was meeting a lot of women who were starting their own tech companies. And I kept thinking, this is really interesting because I know that there's a gender gap in tech, and I knew by that point that it still existed and had gotten worse.
Right, yeah.
Yet consumer internet, by that point, so we're 2007, was really taking over our lives. I mean, this was the dawn of mobile, this was the dawn of the App Store. Women were dominating in these categories. We love social media. technology was just becoming part of our day-to-day lives, and women were huge consumers of that. And so some of these women who were starting these companies obviously were tapping into that, and I thought, well, this is like a story that really hasn't been told yet.
Yeah.
I knew that women weren't necessarily building the products in these big companies, but they were starting their own companies. And so I started curating interviews with them as I was looking for story ideas for, my TV stuff. And so that was like around 2010. And then I stumbled into another stumble. One of the companies that I featured on the Today Show is a company called Red Stamp.
Okay.
And it was one of the first kind of e-card companies on like a mobile platform. What it allowed you to do is, and it still exists today, it allows you to use your photo library on your phone and create these really beautiful cards and invitations. And you could also send hard copies. It was really cool. So I featured them. The founder, who's based in Minneapolis, came to New York 6 months later, and she's like, I want to thank you. Like, this was amazing publicity for us. Like, what can I do to help you? And I said, I'm looking for more ideas. I'm looking for more stories. That's what I have to do. And she said, well, let me introduce you to this woman named Rachel Sklar. And Rachel, at the time, had just started a listserv of women entrepreneurs, technologists, investors, a lot of them based in New York. And it was kind of this like secret handshake society. It was called The List. And I suddenly became a member of The List. And I realized that there was this incredible energy going on among these women who are trying to help each other in the startup world, in the tech world. And no one that I knew of was talking about it.
Yeah.
So that was the brain of the idea.
And so that's awesome. So you got this access to the. And why do they think of it as a secret society? Was it just because?
Well, I think it was this feeling of, they weren't accepted into the boys' club.
Yeah. Okay.
Was it at a time where, people were starting to acknowledge a lot of the unconscious bias that exists specifically in tech, but not just in tech, in finance as well, and other male-dominated professions. And I think this was kind of their way to create their own girls' club.
Yeah.
And so some of the examples of the things that they would do, for example, we talk about this in the book, the Wall Street Journal's digital conference announced their lineup, and there were no women.
Right.
And so the women who are part of the list, they immediately sprung into action, and were posting everywhere on Twitter. This is ridiculous. What?
I actually think I remember seeing that.
Right.
Yeah.
So what happened? They changed the lineup. And so there were lots of different examples of this happening. So whether it was, rallying together, Cindy Gallup is one of the longtime members, talks about the bat signal going up, right? Anytime they hear about something like that, like a conference where there are no women on panels, these people rally and they get the message out and they're making change. It could be something public like that. It could be making the right introduction, right? It's all about network. And I'm sure with the entrepreneurs who you profile on this show, many times that success comes down to who you know.
Absolutely.
And those relationships.
Yeah, that's the difference.
That's what the list was doing, and that's what I was able to get a bird's eye view of and see that in action. And it inspired me to become an investor.
Okay. And so as you started to put the book together, the book is a compilation of stories. Is it also the background story of why where we're at, or is
the first chapter really starts in 2014 and it delves into the history of the what I sort of call the tech feminism movement.
Yeah.
And it does. It kind of, it could have been much more in depth, but we wanted to sort of get to the stories.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first chapter kind of lays out. Our first chapter it's called Champions for Change, and it's about activists like Rachel Sklar, like Tracy Chow, like Debbie Sterling, who's the founder of Goldie Blocks, who actually is a real central character in the book because she, with her Super Bowl ad about her toy, really brought this issue of the fact that, there have been no sort of characters that are represented as sort of builders and inventors and engineers that aren't men until recently. And her toy actually created the first female engineer character. Like, that did not exist.
Right. I'm working on a piece for my column right now about the gender bias in artificial intelligence. Because, you've got Siri, which is a female, you have Alexa, which is a female, and then the first lawyer bot came out, and it's a male. So, we're carrying that forward into that category, and it's crazy.
Well, I just think it exemplifies like those the things that you just mentioned exemplify why we need more people in the room building these products who come from different backgrounds. Because it's not just obviously the voice.
Well, it's even the name.
And the name too,
and,
right?
And the job they have, right? So one's an assistant,
and one is a lawyer and someone in an authority. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think as artificial intelligence starts to permeate more of our, again, day-to-day lives, it is really disturbing to me to think that people with only one type of background, one point of view, one type of pedigree, that those are the people that are building these things.
Right, absolutely. And so as you started to think about putting it into the book and kind of getting into that concept, was it always an idea of a book, or is it just that I have all these amazing stories and they should go into a book?
No, I always knew I had a book in me.
You did, yeah.
Yeah, I've always been a writer. I may have another one too. No, I'm a very rare television person in that, or maybe not so rare today in the age of multimedia, but I always freelanced in print. Yeah. Anywhere I worked, I always had a deal with the news director that I was allowed to freelance. So when I was in Denver, for example, I covered education for the local NBC affiliate, but I also wrote for the Denver Post. I love writing and I love reporting, and I also, for me, as much as I love visual storytelling, there are so many details and nuances that you can't put in a 2-minute or minute 30 television piece, right? So. So the idea of having like a really juicy, just an meaty topic that I could dig into, that in a story that really hadn't been told yet, that was really exciting to me.
Yeah, it's so much. I'm a recovering technologist, and so when you're in technology, a bias that exists is that you can't write. They tell you that.
Yeah.
You code, you can't write. So I'm now on the marketing side, whatever, and it started writing a column for Inc. And it was a little scary because they asked me to do it, and I'm like, I don't know, and I love it. It's like my favorite thing. If I could just go and dedicate myself, love putting the book together, got a couple more I want to work on. So when we come, I'm going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the stories you learned, some things that you would impart or share. I also want to talk about how you heard in these stories individuals overcoming those gender biases. So let's say that we have someone listening who that's their workplace. Like that's what it looks like. What are some tips or techniques that you learned from these individuals on what they do? So we'll be back in just a second. You're listening to Build Your Best Business. I'm talking with Heather Cabot. She's co-founder and co-author of Geek Girl Rising. She's also an angel investor. We're coming to you from 3686 in Nashville, Tennessee. We'll be back in just a minute.
You're your own boss. Now comes the hard part. It's not just about starting a business, it's about successfully managing and growing that business to an eventual exit. And along that entrepreneurial journey, you're going to run into questions and problems that you need quick answers to. Things like, do you need a business plan? How do you read a balance sheet? How do you talk to an investor? When do you bring on a founder? Or what if you're having problems with your partner? These are the types of things that you run into as you're trying to grow that business to the next level, and they may not be the things you want to share in public with other people. They're the problems and issues that arise that, as I have experienced on my own entrepreneurial journey, that I needed to have someone I could trust to reach out to and have a conversation and get a different perspective. And it was often those short conversations that would be the thing that moved me from where I was to where I needed to be. It's for that reason I created the On-Demand CXO product offering. On-Demand CXO is something that you can use to have a conversation with a trusted advisor about what's going on in your business. We do a 1-hour phone call to talk about your business, talk about your objectives, and understand what it's going to take to move you from where you are today to where you want to be tomorrow. From there, you have ongoing access to a Slack channel to ask me questions in private about what's going on in your business, so that I can provide some advice or connections to my network to individuals who can help you solve against that problem. You'll also have access to my Facebook page, which is full of other entrepreneurs who are along the same journey, to have more broad conversations, things that you trust and would talk about in a networking event. But when you need to go and have that conversation with a trusted advisor, you will have the ability to have a conversation with me in a place that's safe, completely anonymous, and unbiased. I want to see you succeed and build your very best business.
And we're back. You're listening to Build Your Best Business. I'm your host, Eric Holtzclaw. Build Your Best Business focuses on the entrepreneurial journey, what it takes to successfully start, manage, grow, and eventually exit a business. We're talking with Heather Cabot. She's co-author and co-founder of Geek Girl Rising. And this book is a very interesting book. It talks about the I don't really call it, the fact that females are not as represented in tech as they should or could be. And as we've seen 2007 occur, that's seems to be moving at least in the right direction.
Moving in the right direction, we have a long way to go.
So tell me about, and anyone who's listening, if you haven't seen the movie Hidden Figures, I'm about to spoil it. So you need to shut me off or skip forward a few minutes. So Hidden Figures, I watched the movie, and I've been programming computers since I was like 7, like very young. I went to computer camp, where most people went to wilderness camp. There were these things that they taught you that. And to learn that there was such a female-owned thing from that movie, right? That's even where the word came from. I had no idea until I saw that movie. What happened? Like, why did that change?
Well, I mean, it's kind of the story of Silicon Valley. I mean, I know that that movie focused on NASA, but I think this has been a problem throughout, which is, when you think of like the women who were in Silicon Valley at the time that consumer internet started to explode, none of those women, I mean, most people could not even name them, like Diane Green, for example, who founded VMware. I mean, the women who were there, their stories just were never told. The men ended up getting so much of the attention, and even to the effect that, and we referenced this in the book, there was a Newsweek cover story last year that was about the founding fathers of Silicon Valley. And it was, all the people that that we all know. Yeah. And it didn't mention any women. And there were women who were there.
Right.
And I think this has just been it's...
Well, Bug comes, there was a lady, I'm trying to remember her name, who found a bug in one of the vacuum cubes. So it's... Yeah.
I mean, there have been women there. I mean, one of the women in our book founded weddingchannel.com, which ended up becoming... I mean, there are success stories that came out, certainly before... the bust. There were definitely women there, but their stories just were not told. And then the reality is that the number of women who were majoring in computer science from the late 80s has been dropping, and dropped through the 90s and continues to be around 18% now. We are seeing a little bit of an uptick now, and there are universities who we talk about in the book that have put various initiatives in place to not only recruit women into computer science and engineering, but also to support them so that they actually persist through the major and they graduate, because that ends up being one of the big issues. And then, of course, I mean, the other factor in all of this is the fact that it's not just the pipeline, right? So it's not enough just to get young girls and women to be thinking about these careers, but once they get into these companies need to find ways to get them to stay. Right. Because still more than half of mid-career women in tech are dropping out. And they're dropping out for a variety of reasons. Unconscious bias, wage inequities, a lack of flexibility in work. What I'm really heartened by is to see a lot of these new companies that are being started by women and diverse teams that are trying to address some of those issues from the beginning, to create a culture of work that supports people from lots of different backgrounds and recognizes that it's not about beer pong and kegerators and all of this other silly stuff that we read about that is real and is inside a lot of these companies, but instead they're putting an emphasis on things like parental leave, better benefits, paying people the same. So I think that's exciting to see that there is certainly a new crop of founders who are really focusing on that. So I'm heartened by that. And, we talk about that in the book.
Yeah, and so if I find myself I'm a woman and I'm in a company, and I feel like that those biases exist. I feel like that, those inequities exist. What are some of the things you learned from these stories around that?
Well, one of the things that we talk about, that we delve into in the book, is these various programs, boot camps, workshops. They're sort of popping up to help women, and one of the really key skills is public speaking. In fact, we have a whole section in the book where we follow two women who run a company called Femgineer, and they do public speaking workshops for women in tech. So there's a scene in the book where they are at Facebook, and they're meeting with their Women at Engineers group, and they're talking with these women about, and they actually refer to it this way, that public speaking is sort of the multivitamin for your career, that it's not enough.
Public speaking is the multivitamin
for your career. Yes, this is according to Purnima Vijayashankar.
I don't disagree. And public speaking is put into this standing on a stage or doing what we're doing. It's giving a good presentation in a room.
Absolutely. It's raising your hand. It's actually putting yourself out there first, just to maybe even ask a question. Mm-hmm. And what they try to say to these women is that if you want to get ahead, it's not enough to be really great on the tech skills. Obviously, you have to compete head to head with men, but because you don't have the leg up, you don't necessarily have the network. You have to work extra hard to cultivate that leadership style in yourself and put yourself out there and constantly get out of your comfort zone. And public speaking is a great vehicle for that. So that's one of the things that we write about in our this chapter 4, which is called Confidence Coaches.
Yeah, I'm a recovering introvert. And the way that I got out of that introvertedness is to join Toastmasters. And Toastmasters is a fantastic program for, they kind of get you started, get you in front of people. And it really helps you not only understand how to give a good speech, but how to judge a good speech, like how people speak. So those kind of things are so important to your career. That's
invaluable. And it's not something that you necessarily learn in computer science, when you're majoring in computer science.
You certainly don't.
But I will say, the schools like Carnegie Mellon, they are offering public speaking now, because they realize that they're engineers. It's not just enough to graduate someone so that they get their first software developer job or product manager job. It's like, how do you groom somebody to ultimately go into those senior roles? And public speaking is one of those things that can really make a difference. So, and it's sort of counterintuitive.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's seen sometimes as where you're just trying to get yourself out. It's a name. It's not about that. It's not about ego. It's really about being able to deliver your message, support it.
It's about owning your expertise. Right. So another scene in the book, we spent time at a conference called the Write Speak Code Conference, and essentially what it is a 2 to 3 day workshop where developers learn how to write op-eds. Learn how to pitch the media, learn how to be better public speakers. And the whole point is it's really arming these women with these communication skills so that they can promote themselves and be visible and get on those panels. Right?
Yeah. And sometimes it's all about how you spin it, right?
It is. And even Rachel Sklar from the list, one of her big points is that, visibility, visibility begets access, right? So visibility is like being recognized as somebody who actually has something of value. But if you don't have that, you're never going to get the access.
Right.
You need to have all of it.
Yeah. I've done several panels, and I'm sure you have too, where you have companies that stand up and give you those pitches, and learning how to pitch. They always bury the interesting thing the fourth or fifth sentence in.
Yes.
They get to the say that first.
Right.
Say that first. Just bring that forward.
Well, a lot of the work, and actually the most satisfying work that I've done as an angel investor, has been working with entrepreneurs on storytelling.
Yeah.
And because oftentimes they're so close to they're so close to their product, they're so close to the business, they forget about the backstory. They forget about their own personal story and how that's so interesting, and how an audience wants to know that. They want to understand your journey and how you came to create this product. And what was your aha moment? All those things are really compelling, and then sometimes they just get buried when you're just so close to your invention.
Yeah. And so you've got the book, and the book is out or coming out?
It came out May 23rd.
May 23rd.
So it's just out.
I came out on my birthday.
Oh,
Was
that's
that weird?
cool.
I don't know
That
if they
is
did it on
cool.
purpose, but the print date was my birthday.
That's
so
cool.
we came home from a trip, and it was at the house, and it was a few days early.
Exciting.
And so what's I know you're doing the book tour thing, which anyone who's ever, it's almost not about writing it, it's about promoting it afterwards. Yeah. So what are some other things that are tenets of the book or pieces that you're thinking about?
You mean like?
Like, are you doing like, is there a...
Well, one of the things that came about, I don't know if you know this, I don't think it was in my bio, but the book was actually optioned by ABC Studios and Kelly Ripa's production company.
Oh, awesome.
And it's being developed into a scripted TV series.
That's awesome.
So
Congratulations.
thank you. So, we'll see. This is my first time working on this type of, I'm a journalist, so I
Right.
have not worked in entertainment. So it's like very new for me, this whole process, but it's exciting. And we're really excited about Kelly's involvement. Her brand is all about female empowerment. And so we could not be more excited that Kelly and her husband Mark are, behind this. So we'll see.
I could totally see this. I'm a big CNBC junkie, so The Prophet and The D
Oh, right.
and all those.
Yeah.
Totally see this as one of those.
Well,
kind of series.
yes, you would think that it would be like a reality show,
Yeah.
but actually they want to create a scripted show.
Yeah.
So that means that it'll be more like, think like Silicon Valley, but about women.
Right.
So they're going to use the book as material to come up with fictitious characters and scenarios all around women and tech and innovation and
Interesting.
entrepreneurship.
I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you. Me too.
Sounds like a fun. So anything else in the future? You said you have another book you're working on. What else are you?
I've always got a lot of, I'm a journalist, so I always have a lot of story ideas in my back pocket. I'm really looking forward to bringing this book to colleges and universities. It'll be coming out in paperback next spring, so we're really excited about that. I'm going to be at Home Shopping Network on July 27th, actually selling the book.
Wow,
which is cool.
You've done well. Very good.
I was on GMA last week,
Awesome.
which was very cool. That was fun being back at ABC, back
Yeah.
in my old stomping grounds at Times Square Studios. So that was very fun. Focusing on colleges and universities and also K-12. Like I think that this book has a great message for young women. I think it's appropriate for girls who may be juniors, seniors in high school who haven't decided what they're going to do yet for
Right.
college. Because it introduces them to women who are working both as entrepreneurs and as technologists, but who are very relatable and
Yeah.
fun and completely dispel the stereotype of who works in tech and what it's like to work in tech.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited about that, about really bringing it to a young audience.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great initiative. So thank you so much for spending the time with
Thank
me.
you.
And good luck with it. We look forward to watching it and seeing the series and all that stuff. That's great. So we're talking with Heather Cabot. She's co-author and co-founder of Geek Girl Rising, also an angel investor. We're coming to you from 3686 in Nashville, Tennessee, which brings together entrepreneurs, investors, and technology, all kinds of things. If you missed any of the show, you need some of the show notes, you can check it on my website. And now go and build your best business.